So friends, my name is Holmes Hummel. I'm Managing Director for Energy Equity and Just Energy Transitions at Stanford's Precourt Institute for Energy. And I'm pleased to participate in the Understand Energy course and contribute this 10-minute piece on policy to the Understand Energy Learning Hub. The first thing I want to make a claim about is that all energy supply chains and all uses of energy, all energy systems, have burdens and benefits. And those burdens and benefits imprint the landscapes of society, our economies, and our politics, literally the boundaries that are defining the jurisdictions in which rules are made. And there is an incredible tapestry of energy transitions over all of human existence that shape all types of contested histories about who has access to energy and what they're using that energy for. Policy is a major product of politics. And politics defines the regimes of power that helps us determine who gets to decide. So I want to take us first and directly into three key concepts for understanding policy and how it applies to anything, especially to energy. First, political power is the ability to change or prevent change to conditions and the processes of shaping power. If you don't have political power, not going to make a policy change. Politics is a process of applying power in governance, and that determines who gets what, when they get it, and how they get it. Politics, of course, is an entire industry and for many people a profession. The outcomes and the products of the negotiations in those contexts produces landscapes of equity, in which case there are, some would say, winners and losers. The landscapes of equity constantly create new sites of contest. And some of them are in a contest between people of different generations, sometimes between different nationalities, but all of them looking for something that would serve their interests. And the policy that you can write about in history is a description of what was determined at that time to be best by the people who had that power. So what is a policy? A policy is a set of ideas or plans that is used as a basis for making decisions. And I've noted here, especially in politics, economics, and business, you may say business, a business policy? Our newspapers are full of corporations making policies for themselves, corporate policies. I am going to do this with my energy. I'm not going to do this with my energy. No matter who sets the policy or what their area of jurisdiction is, most policies have the attributes that you see on your screen here. It has a limit to its application. If we make a policy in one place, it might not apply to another place. The authority to enforce it is assigned to a particular type of entity, and that entity has enforcement capabilities. Otherwise, the policy doesn't really have an effect. And somebody has written down what that policy is and how it works. That's the instrument. And then finally, who has to comply with the policy? Who's covered by it? And what kind of penalty will they face if they don't? Understanding all these different attributes of a policy, of one single policy, will help you detect and discern what's happening when people are negotiating the details about any one of these 7 aspects of every policy. And it fills our energy in the news. So let's take an international view first. The International Energy Agency actually catalogs energy policies around the world, and they're tended by the nation states who submit that data. You too can come and find this policy repository. More than 10,000 policies are recorded there now. On the left-hand side, those filters allow us to look into the different types of policies. And by using the labels that you see on the left, you can see, wow, I never really thought about all the different types of policy instruments that might apply to energy and energy transitions. Trade policies, for example, being one. Another that's extremely popular for policymakers around the world is incentives and investments. Tons of energy, human energy, is spent determining the incentives and investments for energy systems. Not as often discussed, I feel, is the fact that the International Energy Agency's compatriots at the International Monetary Fund have been clear for a generation that the number one policy in energy on Earth is to subsidize fossil fuels. There's no single category of policy that has a larger impact or a larger cash flow. And when I show you the size in the next screen, I think you can agree. It's measured at $7 trillion per year in subsidies to the incumbents in the modern industrial economies in all of the industrialized nations of the world. Many people will ask me about the difference between explicit and implicit subsidies on this chart. And I want to express it directly and then move on from this example. The gray bars at the bottom that are explicit subsidies are like a discount on the product. Like you can have your retail petroleum with 10% off. And petrostates are pretty good at that kind of discount for the people who live there. Blue bars, implicit subsidies, are the true cost of that product absorbed by everyone else on terms that are never actually paid for the product. That means if there's pollution resulting from the use of that product, but that damage is never actually paid for by the people who bought it, then everyone else is producing that subsidy implicitly by absorbing it in their cost of healthcare or their shortened life expectancy. Back to the International Energy Agency, when market signals like a lack of a price for the cost of some part of consumption in our economy does not have the desired effect, policymakers will turn from market-based instruments to regulations. And regulations is one of the largest categories in the entire database for the world's largest repository of energy policies. I want to turn next to some examples that you might recognize in your daily life. Regulatory decisions like whether or not you can site a data center in a location based on the availability of energy at the grid in that location. That's both a siting decision and a decision about interconnection to the grid. Decisions about whether you're allowed to sell a product overseas or otherwise, whether you're allowed to import a product. If it's a very low efficiency product, it might not meet the appliance standards for the country and it won't be allowed to be sold there. There are regulations on water and air pollution discharge. There are waters on telling people that you actually engaged in water and air pollution discharge. On the right-hand side, more of the financial and fiscal instruments you can see familiar, taxes and tax credits and so on and so forth. A couple of examples that are very close to home. Building codes for energy performance. They are promulgated at the state level, adopted there, and enforced at the local level, your local building inspector. At the federal level, lands that are assigned under national custody can be auctioned off for uses by private corporations. And these public-private transactions are framed by a set of policy decisions. Which lands, when, how much, for how much money? Those are other sites of contest for energy industrialization and energy transitions. This is an example that I used in a talk for the Learning Hub on equity because it's a combination of a policy that's about energy transitions, energy incentives, and equity all in one. Here I'll explain the map briefly. Green are places where there have been coal power plants, and the light green are the counties that are surrounding them. Hot pink are places where there's a relatively higher level of employment associated with fossil fuel industries. The national policy of the United States to this day, since 2022, is to offer a bonus tax credit to developers of clean energy in the areas that are shaded on this map. So it's an inducement for private investment in particular places, jurisdictions that are known to be affected by energy transition, and it was developed with equity as an outcome in mind. Let me change to the last part of my remarks to talk less about the federal government level for any nation and make sure that we keep in mind that there are subnational governments also that are participating in the policy process. So if on the left-hand side, there is a country, the United States or otherwise, that has an agency for environmental protection, another one for energy policy, maybe a different one for grid oversight and regulation. At the federal level, those entire complexes can be replicated at a state, provincial, or other subnational level. And I've given you the seals of those examples for California. Within any of the 50 states, there is an entire energy complex, an energy policy complex, I should mention. Governors for 24 states in the United States decided to cooperate on pooling all of their energy transition policies in one place. And you can find it here at data.usclimatealliance.org. Let me be clear. Not all energy policies are motivated by climate action or energy transition to meet climate targets. But these states agreed to pool all of the information they had about their energy policies in one place, which gives us a very rich and vivid place to go exploring and learning about energy policies. At Colorado State University, the State Policy Opportunity Tracker, which has a cute acronym called SPOT, produces across maybe 40 different vectors of energy policy an assessment of how extensive the state's policy actions have been on that category. So you can look up any of the states, any of the 50 states, not just 24 of them, and see how extensive their policy action in any of these categories of your interest might be, and you can drill down and compare. Alongside of SPOT, I want to raise attention and close with this invitation to become a civic-minded, curious explorer as you want to understand more about energy. Every state in the country has a legislative body and a governor that is involved in a democratic process of defining the policies of that place. Now that's true in the United States, and it could be true in places all around the world, but this data set is for the United States. And it shows all of the new policies that have been introduced, everywhere they've been proposed, and what happened to them. It tells you which one passed and which ones did not. And it allows you to understand more about the currents in policy change across levels that are not at the federal level. So to recap, I've tried to introduce in short fashion here a brief overview of the types of policies, the levels of jurisdiction, and the methods of policy change that you might see used: legislative, regulatory. I didn't go far into judicial, but of course, litigation is another pathway. Thanks so much.